More breaking news this morning. President Trump announced his nominee to be the next chair of the Federal Reserve. Kevin Warsh, a former Fed governor, is the pick to succeed Jerome Powell. For at least a year now, Trump has been publicly hounding Powell for not lowering interest rates as much as he'd like, and Warsh has joined that chorus. Adding to the stakes here, the Justice Department probe of the Fed and Chairman Powell, which could complicate Warsh's chances of getting through the Senate. We're tracking this with MS Now White House reporter Akayla Gardner and former chair of the Council of Economic Advisors in the Biden administration, Jared Bernstein. Akayla, what more do we know about Kevin Warsh and what went into this decision for the president?
Anna, it was the battle of the Kevins, I should say, the two top candidates for this job, or the president's chief economist, Kevin Hassett, and the former Fed governor, Kevin Warsh. He was a finalist for this job back in 2017 when the president ultimately nominated Jerome Powell, who's become a frequent target of the president and is right now under investigation by the Justice Department for his oversight of renovation projects for the Federal Reserve. But Warsh has a long history on Wall Street. He previously served on the Fed during the financial crisis. His background is giving relief to market watchers today who were worried about the independence of the Fed. He was previously seen as an advocate for higher interest rates, but more recently has advocated for lower interest rates, which was an explicit criteria that President Trump said that he was looking for in this job. He's also grown critical of the Fed's credibility and its reliance on financial data. He's also called for regime change there. But if he does make it through nomination, which right now is in limbo because Senator Tillis is going to wait for that legal probe to be resolved before he advances any nominee on a key committee, he would still have to work with the board to build consensus on interest rates decision. But at least one aspect of the president's decision, he said today, was the fact that Kevin Warsh has an aspect of central casting. He said the Wall Street Journal reported that he says he has handsome hair, and Warsh has made a point of really appearing on cable news networks and writing op-eds in the lead up to this decision.
Jared, what's your reaction to this pick?
Well, as someone who used to have pretty good hair, I probably wouldn't put that at the top of my list. My reaction is that, you mentioned central casting. I guess Trump mentioned that. I think this guy, Kevin Warsh, should win an Oscar for the best actor impression of being a monetary dove when all his writing suggests he's a monetary hawk. That is someone who prefers to keep interest rates higher, to keep the Fed out of the bond buying business, which he views as supporting fiscal policy. In other words, Anna, it's kind of a weird choice from Trump's perspective. Obviously, Warsh is a very successful political animal who convinced Trump and Bessent that he wouldn't act in the way all of his writings suggest. So, I think that's a little bit strange here. That said, I think we should all give him a chance. I think he will be confirmed. I think Tillis will stop his blockage because I think Trump will cease attacking Powell in support of his new nominee. So I think this probably will be the new Fed chair. We'll watch him closely. We'll give him a chance. But he really put on quite an act there to get the nod.
Now, we know where President Trump stands on whoever ended up replacing Powell, and that is you must lower interest rates. I think the president had said something like pretty much directly about that was like the number one criteria for whoever was going to be his replacement. But Jared, explain why people should be concerned if the Fed chair just becomes an arm of President Trump's or any president's economic platform.
It's a really great question. I almost should have led with that because the biggest question is how independent will Kevin Warsh be from President Trump? I think there were other candidates on the ballot who literally might have taken calls from Trump every morning saying, here's what I want you to do with interest rates today. I don't think that's Kevin Warsh, though it's yet to be seen. He obviously, again, he portrayed himself as someone who would do exactly what Trump wants. But if you give any weight to his writings, he's an advocate for Fed independence. My hope is that that's where he lands. We have to watch that very carefully. And if I were one of the Democrats on the confirmation committee, I'd be pounding him on this point and trying to get a sense of just how independent he would be, because that is absolutely central to the effective functioning of a central bank. And I mean that from the perspective of everyday working folks who, need that independence in order to keep the economy moving forward.
Jared Bernstein, Akayla Gardner, great to have you both. Thank you very much.